Well, hey everyone, welcome back to Inklings Behind the Scenes. This is J.S. Bray with Miss Bray Labs, and today I have the one and only, the incredible Alexi Wheeler. You want to say hello?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jess. It's great to be here and looking forward to jumping in.
Yeah, well, tell the folks, who you are and what because you've done some incredible projects, but just a 10,000 foot view, a little bit about yourself.
Sure, I will do. I mean, jumping back a little bit, it's always good to start that way, I think, because I was one of those kids that was always into cartoons and video games and books. I think when I was much younger, my first school, I was one of those kids that kind of read nearly all the books in the school and was always just curious about storytelling. And I think everything I've done has kind of come back to that. It's always like storytelling. So when I was much younger, I was always thinking, how can you get involved in that space? What can you do? Like, what does that look like? And I'm from London, and London's a long way from Hollywood and Burbank, which is where a lot of the cartoons were certainly made back then. So I'd be watching things like Nickelodeon and never dreamt that it would be possible to work for one of those companies and be involved in any way. But essentially what I did was I kind of stuck to that creative side of things. At one point I was going to go to art college, and then instead I decided to just study film and media at a university level. And I was really lucky. I graduated at a time when there were some interesting things going on the media side of things in London. I initially actually worked for a DVD label when DVDs were like this exciting new thing, and we were moving on from VHSs, and everyone was excited about what DVDs could do, and there was some money there. But the company I worked for actually was involved in kids programming. It was very early days, but they were just starting out on a few things. And I was very lucky to work on a show called Peppa Pig very early in my career. And Peppa,
Nice.
it's easy now to be like, wow, this big preschool show, but it took a long time to get it to where it was. It took a long time for it to break into the US as well. For a while it was quite big in the UK and Europe, and it took a few years for it to break into the US. But I was working on that a very long time ago, like back in sort of 2004, 2005. And Peppa Pig doesn't really age. So, I sometimes watch
Yeah,
episodes with kids and I'm like, oh, I remember reading the script for this one. And sure enough, my name's on the back end there somewhere.
that's awesome.
So I should stress as well, like, as creative as I am, I'm not an animator, I'm not a script writer or a writer. I'm essentially an executive, and what that kind of means is that I help to pull all of those things together. I've been very fortunate to have worked with some brilliant creatives and just help them to kind of get to the next level, help them to realize their ambitions and their dreams, and make some shows along the way. And that's kind of what my career has been for the last 20 years. I spent a lot of time at Nickelodeon on the international side. I finally figured out that Nickelodeon did exist outside of the US, and spent some time working in their London office. And then I helped set up a big content team here in London for Netflix just a few years ago, and did that for 5 years. So I've been very lucky. And as I say, my job is essentially kind of finding great stuff, finding great people, and working with them to make great shows and great content.
That's awesome. Well, that's wonderful. What's one project that you mentioned Peppa Pig, that you
hmm
feel, it doesn't matter if it's success or whatever, but that you personally have like that really pulls on your heartstrings, and why?
Yeah, well, most recently I was really lucky to work on a show called Heartstopper, which was a big kind of YA drama for young
Oh,
adults
okay.
and some younger viewers and older viewers too. But Heartstopper was great because it's this brilliant kind of love story based on these graphic novels, and I think it came out at a time. This is a live action project; it's not animated, but it came out at a time where people were really looking for just a great feel good piece of content. And that came out on Netflix, I think, 2 years ago. And it did really, really well. They're still making more episodes of it. I've since left Netflix, but they're on to season 3, I believe, maybe season 4. And Heartstopper's been huge. And the amount of people I talk to that tell me that show has touched them in a very personal way, and like really helped them get through something, and really help them revisit something has been a huge deal to me. But I'm lucky. Like, making kids programming is great because you meet people all the time that will tell you how important something was to them at a certain age. I worked on a show called Shark Dog more recently, and that's had a similar thing. That's a show for kind of 5 to 7 year olds. But I
Yeah,
speak to kids all
son
the
loves
time. They're
that.
like, yeah, and kids are like, I love that show. Like, it makes me laugh. It makes me feel good, and you can't really beat that. And I've been lucky. I've worked on a ton of great stuff. Like I mentioned Peppa Pig already. 20 years later, I wouldn't have believed that I'd have a 5-year-old who's still watching a show that I worked on so long ago. So I've been really fortunate.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. So you mentioned, well, the thing about, actually, I just got to say, Shark Dog. My son, when he first started watching Shark Dog, he would run around and get so excited, like because that the intro credit that just he got it just like triggered some sort of happy moment for him.
Oh,
And I'm sure
amazing.
all these other little kids did that. But Shark Dog was just, it was just like this perfect like little bit of absolute absurd and then just safe and silly. So like it was just it was a cute show. I really liked that show. Um,
And I
so
think the name, I think the visuals, kids get it really quickly, right? Like I always joked that Shark Dog looks like the side of a cereal box, right? It just
yeah.
like speaks to kids very, very quickly and easily. And when you're looking around on your screen for something great to watch, it stands out, which is always a big help.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Netflix is is from more on consumer side. There's sometimes hard to know what you're getting into. It's like a grocery store where the aisles are the ones that are shown, and you're just not really allowed to kind of dig easily into the other stuff. So it's great
Absolutely.
to have content for kids. That's just at least on the top. That's good. So okay, let's shift gears just a little bit, but. So tell me a little bit about what it is that when you do your day, when you get into your creative process, like
Mhm.
what wakes Alexi up? What's your routine?
Well, routine. My routine is probably these days I don't have much of a routine, so
Oh,
I'm
there
kind
you
of
go.
working for myself these days. So my day generally starts with my kids. Well, always starts with my kids,
Of
flipping
course.
pancakes and getting some coffee down myself before I get them to school. But that's always fun because my kids are now of an age where they're getting into books, they're getting into certain TV shows. So we spend a lot of time talking about that. I'm lucky to live in a neighborhood where we can walk to school, so we all walk to school and we'll be talking about what's going on
That's
today
great.
or what they've been inspired by recently. Um, and then typically, I'll be checking through emails and reading material. I spend a lot of time reading. I'm still like that. I'll be reading scripts most days. I read a ton of books. You can't see it right now, but there's a big pile of books right next to me. There's another pile of books over there. I'm always reading books and looking for like great new possibilities and great new people to work with. And even now, as I'm working for myself, I'm like, okay, what would make a great show? Like, what can I be working on? And every day I'll try and meet with people. That's always really important as well. We've spent many years on the screen as we are now, and I think it's great to be able to get
Yeah.
face to face with people and discuss stuff. So I'll always make sure that I'm kind of out in meetings. I'm in West London. I can get into the centre of town really quickly. So I'm always going to meet with studios or meet with directors or writers to discuss their projects. And that's my day generally. I kind of try and not work too late anymore, especially for now, as I don't really need to be working late. So I'll be around playing with my kids. Monday night is like one of the few nights when none of my kids have any after school activities. So we had the board games out and we're playing some games with them.
Oh,
And
that's
that's
great.
standard days these days. And on the weekends, my kids have a ton of stuff going on between swimming and soccer practice and soccer matches. And, I end up being a bit of a taxi driver on the weekends, if I'm honest.
Uber dad.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like work, like hanging out with my kids and then working on projects that I think kids would like. And that's kind of how I base things now. And I always say it, to me, it always comes back to great storytelling. Whatever I'm working on, that's just the square one of what I have to be doing is great storytelling.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I do. I'm there with you. The power of story can connect people. It's like this magic. I think if there is such a thing as magic, it's what story can do. You mentioned though, I just want to get the flavor. You mentioned that you play board games with your kids. We also have a board game night. We've been doing that for Friday nights,
Oh,
kind of
nice.
mixing it up because. But what's a board game that your whole family enjoys, or do you all have to pick one? Everyone has to kind of take
I,
turns.
I don't know if you guys know this one, but do you know Game of Life? Do you know that game? There's a game called Game of
Yes, yes,
Life.
yes.
It was kind of big when I was a kid. My kids have just recently become hugely obsessed with Game of Life, which I find hilarious because if you've played that game, you
Yes.
do fairly mundane grown-up things like you
Yes.
get a new car or you have to buy a house or you have to pay some bills, and they cannot get enough of this thing. Chess has become big in my family. My two older
Oh,
kids, like from the age of kind of 10 and 7, maybe slightly younger, they got into chess and they go through phases where they play a lot of chess. But yeah, we have a big pile of games. Connect Four, all of those
Oh, that was
classics.
a good one. Classic.
Monopoly, we're a little careful with to make sure that we don't just start fighting each other.
I know that's so true.
Yeah, but
That's
I
wonderful.
can't wait till that. I can't wait till we can play like some of those slightly older ones. There's like a bunch of games that I loved. You probably have to be sort of 13, 14 to be able to like fully
Oh
understand. I think
yes,
that that'll be fun.
yes. I've recently gotten really deep into this YouTube series, kind of quite old now, but called Tabletop. It's got Will Wheaton in it, and they review tabletop games, but it's kind of great to revisit with my kids. And um, we got into this game called Forbidden Island. Have you ever heard of Forbidden Island?
I think I have. I've not played it though.
So what makes this game unique, and while it matters with storytelling, because I think you would love it, it's what it is. It's a co-op game. So you can either succeed together or you fail together. And so
Right. No.
that was the first win because my son, he's 9 now, but he's kind of a sore winner and a sore loser. So I figured let's all win together. But the game it starts off that this island is sinking. And each character that you choose has a special power, and that power allows them to functionally help. There's a pilot, there's an engineer, there's a diver, and so you have to move along this island as it's sinking and retrieve these tiles, these treasures, and then fly off before the island goes underwater. Yeah, it's Forbidden Island is fantastic. They made a sequel to it, which is a little more complicated, but it's complicated enough to keep my son's interest, but not so complicated that he's going to be like over his head. It's not like Risk or something like that, where it'd be a little too intense, but just a game wreck. So that's wonderful. Well, I just want to wrap this up, and I thank you so much, Alexi, for your time, for being on this podcast, this stream, and so moving forward. Now that you're in this new seasons of your life, but you also get to spend so much time with your children, which is wonderful. What is one thing in your career that you feel like your next part has to have? It absolutely has to have. What is something that you feel like is a must have?
I mean, there's probably 2 or 3 things, but I think I'll go.
Sure.
I think I'll go with balance. I think having had quite a high functioning and very intense executive job in the past, or multiple jobs that often required me kind of working 12 hours a day, often traveling a great deal and not even being in the same continent, let alone the same country as my kids. I think finding a way of balancing my career and my personal life would be great. I still want to work hard. I still want to make great things. Hopefully I'm going to make some movies and some new shows. But at the same time, I'd love to just find a way of incorporating my life more firmly into that and being around a little bit more. So I would say balance is probably the most essential thing to add to this next part of my career and life.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I can attest to that. Having balance is an act in itself. I think balance is a verb. So
Absolutely,
right,
absolutely.
It's
and it's an ongoing process, right? You have to, it's that thing of almost like the next stage is the most important stage. When you fail or if something goes wrong, the next day is the most important thing. And balance is part of that. When you're going to have days that are unbalanced, but you have to just level that out again somehow and find a way of just getting back on track.
Oh, absolutely. And that's wonderful. Well, thank you, Alexi. I've had such a pleasure chatting with you on the podcast and just connecting. We've known each other for quite some time, and it's just great to see you and just to hear what you're doing. So thank you all again for tuning into our podcast. You all have a blessed day.